Welcome back to another episode of Distorted Opinions. Again, I'm joined by Matt and Ted, and we are excited to welcome back Luke Condon from the band Town Meeting and also the co-host of a podcast called Long May You Young. Luke, welcome back. We had a great time last week. I suspect that this week's going to be more of the same.
Oh, yeah.
I expect it.
I also expect
Look, I didn't even change my shirt in a matter of a week. Looks like none of us changed our shirts in a matter of a week.
None of us did.
You guys are putting a lot of pressure on me now to really make sure this is a good episode, and I don't like that kind of pressure.
Oh, no pressure, man. There's no
podcast
pressure.
already. You're used to this.
Yeah,
that's true.
seriously.
Nice
You're the most
segue,
experienced. Yeah, most experienced person out of the three of us as far as podcasting. So, we mentioned briefly last week that Luke is the co-host of a podcast called Long May You Young, which he co-hosts with his brother Russ and Mike Shue, who was a former WAAF DJ. And if you've listened to any of our previous shows, you've heard us talk a bit on some of the episodes about the demise of WAAF earlier this year. Mike is now a DJ on the Pike in Worcester, and I believe he's on from 4 to 8 p.m. on weekdays. So Luke, I kind of know a little bit about how that transpired because I listened to Long May You Young, and I've also listened to another podcast called Breaking the Ice, which Mike is on with Josh Dolan. And I know you and Russ were on that a few months ago.
Yes.
But for those who maybe haven't heard those podcasts, how did you guys end up doing a podcast about Neil Young only with Mike Shue?
So we were on Breaking the Ice, and we ended up talking about Neil Young a little bit, I think. And I grew up listening to Mike too, and I knew he was a fan of Neil. And so I don't know who messaged who, but one of us messaged the other one, and I think maybe he said, like, "Hey man, it was great talking to you. Like, we should do a Neil Young podcast, ha ha ha." And then I immediately wrote back, like, "Yep, and we're going to, and it's going to be in 2 weeks. We're going to start." And I sent him a 2-page itinerary of like what I thought we should do, and he's like, "Oh, okay, relax."
Leadership.
Yeah, but I was I love Neil Young, and Russ also probably more than me likes Neil Young, and I can't think of anyone else that I admire as a songwriter, as a performer, as someone who just does his own thing and doesn't give a shit about anything. He exemplifies just like honest and good songwriting to me. And his catalog, I think he's on his like 67th or 68th studio album. And
Wow.
He started in 69 was his first one. And they've been different. Some are good, some are bad. So we decided to do a podcast where we go through every album a week at a time. We spend a week, we listen to it. And I think this coming week, at the time of us recording this, we're going to be on episode 20, and I still haven't gotten sick of Neil's music. So yeah, I love it. Yeah,
That's awesome.
It's
Yeah,
impressive.
So if you were to go ahead and what's the first album that comes to your mind that you could just, obviously, with Neil, completely agree. You can never get enough of his albums and whatnot. But what's one album that just comes to your mind that you just instantly think, you know what, this is probably one of my top 5 albums?
so that changes a lot, but right now and for a while now, it's been Zuma. I love Zuma.
Yeah.
It's I think it's his 8th. It was one of the first albums after what he called the Ditch Trilogy, which was 3 albums that he didn't really like at the time, at least. And I strongly disagree. They're all great albums. But Zuma, he's got Crazy Horseback with him. It's got something for everyone. Cortez the Killer, Barstool Blues. It's just a great, solid album. Danger Bird. It's really good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I know I listened to Mistress Carey's podcast, and for those that don't know, Mistress Carey is another DJ that was on WAAF for all the years. I know, RIP AAF. And so she had Mike Shue on as a guest a couple of weeks ago, and Mike basically went into detail and talked about the podcast that you guys have, and it kind of described a similar story, in quite a length, and it's very interesting because obviously we all grew up listening to the radio station, and we all know these names.
Oh, look at that!
Yeah,
Wow.
there's Carrie for the signed
viewers
picture
out there
of
with the
Mrs.
video.
Carrie for those.
How old is that,
just
Matt?
listening.
I don't know, but she's like fine wine. The older she gets, the sexier she is.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll agree with that, actually.
So yeah, so either way, it was pretty cool to hear Carrie and Chu talking about that podcast. And I'm like, because obviously at that point we hadn't reconnected to even get you as a guest on this show at that time, but it's like, oh cool, like I know Luke.
Yeah.
And it's like a couple of the AAF guys are talking about friend I went to school with, so it was pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, we owe all that to Josh Dolan. He's been a friend of ours and a fan of our bands for a while, and then I've hooked up with him on some comedy shows that I've put on at a coffee shop in Fitchburg, and he's been like super helpful. He's not only doing stand-up but also helping me book guests. Josh, he's just a really good dude. Josh Dolan, Breaking the Ice podcast. Check it out if you haven't yet.
Yeah, great podcast.
So look, I didn't know that you did stand-up comedy.
No, God, no. No. I wish. I'm terrified. I can play music in front of thousands of people and not blink an eye, but if I have to tell jokes in front of 10 people, I literally start shaking. I don't know what it is. I have so much respect for stand-up comics. But no, I did booking for a coffee shop, and it was almost all music, and I was trying to think of ways to shake it up. So I called Josh. I said, hey man, can you help me put together a comedy show? And he's like, hell yeah. So we did a couple of those. So
Nice.
and he does stand up himself, Mr. Dolan.
Awesome.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So go see Luke Condon, stand-up comedy, next Saturday down at the local Fitchburg coffee shop.
Oh, never. I'm literally shaking thinking about that.
Oh jeez. No,
Yeah.
I'm with you, man. I don't do well public speaking, but if you give me an instrument, I've got no problem playing in front of large groups of people. But don't ask me to speak in front of anybody. I hated in school when I had to stand up and give a presentation in front of the class. I couldn't. I distinctly remember actually doing a presentation about Harry Potter, and I showed up with a witch's getup for whatever reason, and I could see the brim of the hat shaking in front of me. I was so friggin' nervous talking, and this is just a class of like 15 kids. It's not like it was a big room of people, so I can absolutely relate on that level.
You know
Public
what's funny though is it's not even the speaking. It's because I can talk. We got a banter in between songs, and I can go up and intro stuff, and but it's the if I know that I have to be funny, that's what scares me. Like now there's an expectation of how the audience is supposed to react, and it's if it doesn't happen, I feel like I'll feel this crushing defeat, which is like normal. Like any stand-up will tell you go through years of just eating it on stage, but something about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love stand-up, but not for me.
I prefer to be an audience member. But not to be the one to necessarily be on that the point person for that.
Yeah.
To change gears a little bit, I know we had talked a bit. This is basically a podcast about the podcast that you are currently doing, and in our pre-show, you had mentioned that. You kind of feel like podcasts are one of your favorite things to do, my favorite mediums, in that you even referenced it as being a quote golden age for podcasts.
I think
curious
so.
to have you enlighten our audience and where that thought is coming from.
Well, I just feel like where technology is, where radio is starting to feel unnecessary. Podcasting, they're easy to make and they're easy to consume. And so I drive a truck when I'm not podcasting and playing music. Like that's my main job. So I listen to tons and tons of podcasts, and there's so many different styles, and there's so many different, like there's something for everyone, I feel like. And it's just they're so easy to do if you feel inclined to do it, and I don't know, and they're fun. It's fun. It's fun to be like, hey, why don't we talk about Neil Young for 2 years and just see what happens? Like, and it's great because there's no expectation. There's no, and like I remember when we had a meeting, me, Mike, and Russ, about what we wanted it to be, and it was just because there's some podcasts that are very produced, and I like some of those, and then there's some that are just really kind of free flowing conversation, and I like those too, and then there's some that are like that I don't like, and that's fine too. Like I think that's what's great about it is there's so much out there, and you can connect with so many different styles. So like we have Neil Young fans that love our podcast because we go on way too many tangents, and we get very like silly and talk about all kinds of inappropriate things all the time. But a lot of Neil fans like that, and then some hate it, and I kind of like that too. I like that there's so many options, but we're the only Neil Young podcast right now, which is very interesting.
He cornered the market.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which is odd to me because there's a million music podcasts, like artist specific. Like I think 100 Beatles podcasts. Like there's so many podcasts about the Beatles, but
Sure.
Neil Young, in my opinion, he's like easily on that Mount Rushmore of like classic American music, like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. He's had he's made good shit in all these eras. Yeah. But especially like the stuff that he made in the 70s was like incredible. So it's weird to me that no one's done a Neil Young podcast, or I don't know. Maybe they exist and I just haven't been using the right search words.
Well, it now exists because you guys created it.
That's true. Yeah. So
every journey has to start somewhere.
I don't know. How did you guys, can I turn the tables here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you start getting into this podcast? How did the idea come about?
Why don't you take that one?
Yeah, so the quarantine happened, and I don't know, it was maybe like a month or so into that, and I was talking to a coworker, and somehow we got on the subject of music, and she was like, you should start a show about music. And I was like, yeah, and for a long time, so for those who don't know this show actually started out that it was supposed to be video only. It was supposed to be a show that I was planning to air at work, and obviously we would put it online. And so I was like, I for years had told people I do not get in front of the camera. That's not my role in a production. I am behind the camera. I do the directing. I do the audio. I run the camera. I do everything except for get in front of the camera. You're never going to get me in front of the camera. And I was on a show one time at my previous job, and I would describe it as being a horrific experience because I was being interviewed, but it wasn't a topic that was something that was, I didn't feel I could talk on it very well. And I don't even remember how I ended up being on that show. All I remember is I didn't enjoy the experience, and I said I would never get on camera again. And so I was like, well, maybe. Okay, there's not much else going on. So I sent a text out to our jam session text list, which Matt and Ted are on, and a few other people. And I said, I'm thinking about starting a show about music. Who's interested in being involved? And Matt and Ted responded back, and Ted initially had said, well, I don't know if I'm going to be on every episode, because if you guys are going to be talking about gear and guitars and those sorts of things, I'm not really sure that I can contribute something to every episode. So we were like, well, let's just figure out, we'll do a pilot show, and then we'll figure out a list of topics that we can potentially talk about. And we were like, well, let's do
typical drummer,
right? Yeah. You guitarists over there.
Yeah. I don't do string things.
Yeah,
Didn't you start off playing guitar?
I hesitate.
No, I still have all my guitars. I still dabble on guitar. I have.
You just don't dabble in talking about them.
Well, drum's my main instrument. I mean,
just kidding.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously we did that first episode, and after that, Ted was like, oh, you know what? That actually wasn't too bad. Maybe I could be in on this regularly. And so that's kind of how it came about, that it was the three of us. Because we were like, well, maybe we'll focus it more on gear. But then we were like, that'll kind of make it a very specific audience. So maybe we do just general music discussion, occasionally do an episode about gear. So that's where we do the gear talk, and we try to do those once a month. So, I mean, it was really, we don't really have anything else going on, and we're all into music. So maybe we could just start a show about music, and that's kind of how it came about. And whether or not it continues once things start to normalize, or if it continues in the same format that it's been in, remains to be seen, because we're all going to get busier once we have to return to our jobs in the office and stuff. But for now, I mean, it's a ton of fun, and we just get together once a week and we pick a topic to talk about, or we have a guest. And I don't know, I don't want to speak for Matt and Ted, but I think that having the guests on has been a ton of fun, because we get different people with all sorts of.
It's been incredible. I mean, I like every episode that we're doing. I think as Caleb mentioned, the first the pilot episode, and then probably by like episode 3, we all talked again and said, hey, is this working out? And we all, the 3 of us were all on par and said, yeah, we can make it happen. Ted said, hey, yeah, I think I could do this, on a regular basis. And wow, shit, I'm losing my voice now. Great. All the excitement because Luke's on for the second time. So and ever since then, it's been every episode's been fun, but definitely can agree that having guests on the show has brought the show a lot more color and a lot more it's just a lot more freedom too. I mean, every guest that we've had so far has been incredible. Right now we have a waiting list of people that want to be guests, because we record this in advance. And it's just been, obviously, it's been very free flowing. Like we try to talk about something, and then we do this, and then we kind of like intertwine, and then get back to what we tried to originally conversate, which goes back to what Caleb was saying in the previous episode, where it's like we try to stick to a half hour, but we're just like, nah, screw it. Just we try to get to at least maybe an hour then.
Yeah.
Right. And so for the obviously I love doing this podcast with everybody, and obviously the guests bring a lot of different, as Matt put it, color, or contribute a lot of different perspectives that we could possibly get stale with if it's only just the 3 of us every week. And each guest has their own experiences for a particular topic that is unique, that we don't always wouldn't have that perspective otherwise. So I think that really adds a lot of character to our podcast now, especially as we're getting more and more guests, because it does change the dynamic. Obviously, I feel like we haven't had this much banter, but again, we go back so far for having you on for today. But
plus, I'm wildly interesting, so that helps too.
I mean, clearly
it does.
So I know, definitely, for the behind the scenes where this all started, it definitely, it kind of explains it, but it's still morphing, as we continue to go. And obviously, we've only been doing this for 5 months or so in terms of release time. So, we're still evolving.
And you guys are interesting too, because the nature of this podcast, it's so all encompassing that you can talk about this subject up here, like themes from TV shows that you like, and then you can talk about gear over here. And it's kind of nice because then it doesn't get stale, where you run I think if we did our Neil podcast and there was no banter, there was no joking, it could get really boring really fast. If we were just like, we listened to this album and these are our opinions, and this song, the tempo was 3/4 and blah, 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 blah. But like, if you don't throw your personality into it, I just feel like it's hard. And it's hard anyway. And then when you like narrow it down to this is one subject and we're going to do this for 66 weeks. I don't know. Are there, I know we dabbled on this in the pre-show a little bit, but if you guys could if you weren't doing Distorted Opinions and someone approached you and said, I want you to do a podcast about a band or an artist and only that exclusively, do you guys have anyone that you would be like, no questions, it would be this band or this artist?
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Kayla, I feel like I already know yours.
I feel like everybody on this show knows
It's town
what I'm
meeting,
gonna
isn't it?
say.
It's town meeting.
Oh,
I mean,
you got me.
I want to talk about
I mean,
this
she's already
band.
got the shirt on, so and
Town
Matt's got the
meeting.
signed CD. I mean,
You
mega
got me.
fans.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know me or didn't know me throughout middle school and high school, I had enough Metallica shirts that I could wear a different one every day of the week for a month
Jinko
and not
jeans.
repeat. And yeah, big jeans that people used to joke I was housing a homeless person underneath.
It was a style.
And so yeah, and then I also had one of those LL Bean backpacks that everybody gets their initials on, but instead of my initials I had Metallica on mine.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, so I think without a doubt, I don't think Metallica's catalog is anywhere near as large as Neil's, so I don't honestly know how long I could sustain a Metallica only podcast, but I can tell you that I got into them in the days where CDs were still a thing versus MP3s. And so at the time I had all of their studio releases plus a ton of imports and a ton of singles and a ton of live stuff and bootlegs and you name it, I had it. And so, you know, I think I could probably talk at length about Metallica, maybe not as much as Neil Young, but definitely I could talk at length about that particular band without question.
You should do it. Why not?
I should. I'd have to find
Who has the
somebody else
time?
who's yeah, seriously. Well, that's the
One
other
podcast
issue.
at a time.
Well,
I'm sure we'll have an episode where it'll
just a Metallica one.
Just a Metallica episode.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of touched on that in the 5-amp Fuse episode, Matt.
I probably shouldn't be on that episode though, because I was quoted at one time that we don't play that shit.
I remember that. That's great.
So I probably shouldn't be on that one.
Wait, I thought it was I thought it was Chris who said that. No,
Matt said that to Chris.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Chris wanted to play Metallica, and Matt was like, "Dude, we don't play that shit."
We don't play
that's great.
And then
We'll
just
say real
that was
stuff
the
like
end of
Green Day,
conversation.
Blink-182.
So not to say that this is something that's going to happen at all, but another reason we did this podcast, the quarantine makes it easier to do this stuff. But
Sure.
I'm a huge fan of the show Comedy Bang Bang and the podcast Comedy Bang Bang, and then they do Scott and Adam Scott do a podcast. They started a podcast called "Are You Talking U2 to Me?" And they just talk about how much they love U2. And
Oh my God.
but the end of that, they meet the guys from U2 and they talk to them and they have them on an episode. And so, especially in an age of quarantine, we thought, why don't we do this? And I mean, worst case scenario, we just have fun talking about Neil, and we like doing that anyway. Best case, I don't know. Eventually, we interview Neil Young, which would be a dream come true. And we've already interviewed. We interviewed Nils Lofgren. We interviewed Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo. So we're slowly working our way up to Neil, but we haven't gotten there yet. So I don't know.
I'm sure with Mike's
I'm sure it'll happen.
You could probably he could hook something up.
It better. He's fired.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. What about you, Matt and Ted? If you could do a artist-centered podcast? So
I would probably have to go again, not catalog, not being very. I mean, they've been around for over 20 years now, but Lamb of God is my favorite.
Oh, all right.
Metal band. Definitely would be my choice. I've met all the guys. I've got pictures with them, signed books and magazines and CDs and all of that. Probably that would definitely be my pick. I'm quite familiar. I've listened to their entire discography like many times over. So no question. That would be easy choice for me.
Nice.
Yeah. Probably and I actually had to just do a quick verification and whatnot, but if there was anything, probably just an artist by the name of Butch Walker. I put him, he was mentioned in a previous episode.
Who is it? Butch Walker?
Butch Walker, yep. So he's like this, Southern Georgia guy. I actually ran into him. I actually ran into knowing about his music and him for an opening with an ex-girlfriend that she wanted to go to a concert. So of course I'm like, all right, fine, I'll freaking take you. And he opened up for her, and just his type of verse. He's what really.
We're just not going
to
to address that.
Yeah. What a charmer.
It's not my wife. So I think I have clearance on that one. But I ran into him. He actually just really drove me into really becoming a songwriter and really more of that like indie rock type of aspect. So it wasn't until like I got into his album. I didn't know that he was actually a part of this album called Marvelous 3, which I've heard of before. I never knew that he was actually in it. And then when he started doing his own solo stuff, it wasn't until his second album, Letters, came out in 2004 that I just fell in love with it. And ever since then, I saw this guy like 5 times, went out of state to go see him. And I want to say like one point he like pointed to me. I mean, but I can't, he's kind of like doing it. But I mean, that's someone I could probably, not maybe do a full podcast, but
sure.
I could probably do maybe a handful of podcasts just talking about the experiences, his albums, he's come out with. And, even the side projects too. Like he came out with a side project called 1969, which was, it was almost like an underground album that came out, but more like black metal. And it was completely different from his Letters album. But the closest I've ever gotten to talking with him was when MySpace, now we're dating ourselves, MySpace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Was he in your top 8?
He wasn't actually maybe, yeah, I think he was about number 7 maybe. But I reached out to his guitarist and his touring guitars at the time. It wasn't his guitarist, but it's touring guitars. And I just asked about like the gear that he uses. But that was probably like the most that I've ever gotten like a close synopsis of like actually talking with him, which is not even him.
Yeah. I'll have to check him out. Butch Walker?
Yeah, Butch Walker, yeah.
All right, I'll check him out.
Good stuff.
Nice.
Hell
So
yeah.
what's the future of your podcast? Obviously you only have a limited number of albums, and granted, it's well over a year's worth of episodes. Where do you see the end point? Or obviously it sounds like if you can get Neil as an interview, that would be like the pinnacle, cherry on top of all those episodes. But
episode 100.
Yeah.
Off of album 23 out of 69, 68.
So we've talked about this. So where Long May You Young is part of around episode 7 or 8, we got picked up by this group called Pantheon Podcasts, and they're this kind of all-encompassing group that does different like artist themed podcasts or music themed podcasts. And but one of the things they asked us is this sustainable? Like what will you do after you run out of Neil Young albums? And so I don't know, we might switch to another band. We're all big fans of the band. So we would do a podcast, but there's already a few of those. I don't know. That's a
Rush.
I know Mike loves Rush. I'm not super familiar. I know like Working Man. I don't know a lot of Rush songs, but that might be even a more interesting take is you got the guy who knows them, and then you got the 2 dudes who have no idea about them at all. But I don't know. It would have to be someone that had a pretty big catalog, maybe, or maybe not, or maybe then you'd go into genre. There's also all these Neil offshoots that you could do. So we would do all Neil's albums, and then maybe we'd go back and do some Buffalo Springfield, or do some like solo Crazy Horse stuff, or the Stray Gators, or just some of these different side projects or offshoots he's had. I don't know. I think as we get closer to it, we'll have to figure it out, or maybe we just start over from episode 1. Who knows?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the nice things when creating Distorted Opinions is, anything and everything music, because that's such a wide open landscape to possibly talk about anything. So it does give us a chance to bounce around and not necessarily feel stuck, because we already have that music interest, and obviously that's just a general appealing subject, but at least we can pick anything we want that even pertains to the subject and still be within our target audience and what we're trying to do.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and even like, so going back to the U2 podcast, like they finished all the U2 albums. And then if U2 does something interesting or releases a new album or plays a show that they go to, they'll do another episode, but it's not weekly anymore. And then they switched to they switched to REM. They called it Are You Talking REM Me? And now they're doing the Talking Heads. So like, I don't know. I think after a while you figure out. I think like in podcasting, it's all about chemistry. And me, Russ, and Mike kind of found we had pretty good chemistry with each other. We can bounce off each other pretty well. And so I think whatever subject we end up going after, but Neil will last us at least 3 years because we're doing his albums. Now we're doing some movies he's done. We're going to do concerts, all kinds of stuff. And then we'll throw in interviews here and there, which is kind of fun. So
Luke, I got to ask and whatnot. So, and I'm wondering if I feel like this was off of the Long May You Young podcast, or maybe it might have been the Breaking the Ice podcast, but can you explain the shirtless photo with the walkie-talkie on the side? Was that just an accidental like photo? Because I know that the Mike and Josh, they're ragging on it, and then I looked at it and I went, "What?" I have to get the backstory. What happened with that?
So
I'm not even familiar with where picture you're even talking about.
I'm sure at this point in the podcast, Kayla will have it up on front and center.
There'll be a picture.
No, town meeting was having a rehearsal.
Okay.
And I've been watching Trailer Park Boys, like there's no
Trailer Park Boys,
like there's no tomorrow, and so I thought it would be funny because I got a good sized gut to dress like Randy for when everyone showed up for
them dirty cheeseburgers.
Yeah, so I got some khakis, some dress shoes, and I didn't wear a shirt, and I just pressed my stomach out as much as I could. And then I even had like the glass that Julian always carries around, like the rum and Coke going. So when the guys pulled up, they thought it was funny, and I said, "Why don't you like take a picture and I'll post it on Facebook?" And I did that. But Josh just doesn't watch any shows that are funny at all, and had no idea that I was being Randy. But anyway, Ted, it's on my Facebook page. If you scroll back, you'll see it and you'll appreciate it.
Nice. I've definitely grown out my beard to be Julian for Halloween.
I see you growing the beard back out again.
Yeah, no, this is 4 days.
Looking nice. It's looking pretty fresh.
Yeah, October 1st. Just letting it go.
But that has backfired though, because of that picture and then because of that podcast, we played at Hollis Hills, socially distant show. But there's a lot of people there, and I had some drinks. And about halfway through the second set, this sounds like I'm bragging about myself, but if you've seen my physical appearance, you'll know it's not at all. But people because of that photo started yelling for me to take my shirt off, and unfortunately I did oblige. And then I did a belly solo where I pulled the mic down and
bongoed. Nice.
Slapped my belly. But the things you do for love and alcohol. The things you do under the influence. And now we're playing this is I hate how long this dumb bit has carried on in my life, but we're playing some music at a friend's wedding in October, and he said, if you don't come dressed as Randy from Trailer Park Boys, then I'm not letting you into my wedding. So apparently I'm doing that as well.
Oh,
there it is.
I think you found your next guest.
Yeah.
The
I'd love to talk to those dudes.
Well, that's amazing. Well, that's great to hear that backstory, because I was just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have to admit that the walkie-talkie got my first sight before the shirtless photo.
Well,
as a trailer park supervisor.
That's right.
Assistant, rather.
That's right. In case Mr. Leahy calls, I just want to be prepared. So
right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So Luke, I know so we have Long May You Young, we have obviously Break the Ice. What are some other podcasts that are in the near future that you're thinking of collaborating with, or maybe even doing your own solo podcast? Is that something down the line?
So I don't think I would do anything as permanent. I don't know what's the word, like
concurrent.
No, like I wouldn't mind doing a few one-offs, but I have to do one or two at a time. Like Town Meeting had the Town Meeting podcast. I haven't done one of those in months, but that's just kind of us shooting the shit. And there's no real subject. I did one with my daughter called Arguments with My Teenage Daughter.
Yes.
It sounds like a great podcast.
It was a ton of fun, but I couldn't commit. I know that sounds crazy, but like I just couldn't nail down. I don't know. They just became very sporadic, and we actually might do another one this week. But I kind of prefer it to be a little more sporadic. I've thrown around the idea of doing an ICP podcast called Juggalo Curious, because from someone who only dabbled, I think the whole like Juggalo culture is so fascinating to me, and they always get this kind of bad rap. But it's also like very like they're very loyal, and like the dudes from ICP, they say some like really cool stuff politically that I agree with. And they I don't know, not from what they said in the 90s, not that at all, but like currently, like some very like pro LGBTQ stuff, which I think is really cool for these bands to have. I don't know. I just think that'd be a fun one. I also wanted to do a podcast called Defending the 90s, which I don't know if I referenced that.
You did.
But I just think that'd be fun to like tackle like Jenko Jeans or chocolate starfish and hot dog flavored water, and and just say, go at it from not an attack point of view, but like, I don't know, some of this stuff still kind of fucking rocks. I don't know.
Well, and to be fair, speaking of 90s music videos, I recently watched again Kid Rock's Bawa to Ba music video.
Boy.
And it screams 90s, late 90s for the outfits and some of the ridiculousness in that video, which to me, I mean, some of the guitar groove in that song still holds up. It's really catchy, but the music video didn't quite age as well.
He's the bull god, man.
Some of the music in the 90s, especially the early 90s, were it's phenomenal. Like you had these one-off bands that came out with a great song and kind of like fell through, but like you have Filter's a great 90s band that had that single take a picture, and now you don't even hear them anymore, but that also screams music too. That screams 90s as well. So some of these riffs out there, some of these just mush of I can't even fucking talk.
Abandoned. Eject.
Mute.
My voice. I feel like I'm like losing my voice. Hopefully not like Corona shit and whatnot. But even though I came out negative, but I don't know. I feel like actually it's funny. I sent you guys. No, don't worry. I know. I saw Kayla's face. Like, oh, I just pulled the Harris face. No, but no, actually, I don't know what the fuck I did, but anyways, I feel like when people lose voices, I sent the video to the guys and whatnot, but I feel like at this point of voice, it'd be a great cover to do.
Oh boy!
Once there was this kid who
Crash that video that you had sent.
Yep.
All right, I didn't understand where that was from. It was just jumbled sound.
I know.
A 90s band.
Great.
It didn't make sense.
No, but oh my god!
You never heard that song?
Yeah, the Crash Test Dummies.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't listened to any of that. I remember Crash Test Dummies, but I mean, I played the crap out of all those toys. But
You would know that song, Ted. I think it's in Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah,
okay.
Pretty sure.
Again, I need to revisit it. So
sometimes if I eat cereal, I sing it. I go, or a really good meal.
I'm guessing, Ted, you probably just couldn't understand the video he sent because it was like insanely compressed and I couldn't understand any of what he was saying. I was like, what is
Speaking
this?
of the 90s, it looked like it was uploaded from MySpace.
You guys have Android or iPhones?
iPhone.
Oh, well, that's why it's compressed.
Well,
Yeah, that's why.
okay, blame us.
That's your fault.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, there's a million podcast ideas, and I like that. So I like that idea. We also we all love the band Wilco, so that would be kind of if we finished Neil and wanted to do something, that might be a route to go down. Like go old Uncle Tupelo stuff, and then work our way up. Like it amazes me that a lot of these albums I still listen to now. Like I love Wilco, and those albums came out in the 90s, and I never even knew who they were in middle school and high school. I just missed that boat entirely till later on in life.
Right. Isn't it funny to know that like the older you get, the albums that you listen to that were back when we were all younger are phenomenal compared to listening to now, and it's completely 180. And I feel like when we listen to these albums that came out, we took advantage of them back then, because now listening to them like 10, 15 years later, it's like, wow, this is actually really good.
Right.
Well, and this nostalgic factor, not going to lie. I mean, a lot of that stuff, that definitely plays a factor into you fondly remembering, certain riffs and whatnot in the songs. So, I mean, I'm kind of mindful of that. I do tend to, my music collection is a bit dated for said reason. Try to at least get a bunch of, albums and things released within the current year every year, just to make sure it's still got some fresh tracks in my music mix. But I do spend a fair amount of time, sitting right around 2006 or 7. It's kind of like the glory years of majority of the music that I currently listen to.
Glory years or glory days by Bruce Springsteen?
Years.
A little further back. Oh, shoot.
So I know
guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, we need to jump into Song of the Week, because we are running a little low on time. And if everyone prepared for who
I
wants
did
to go
prepare.
first?
I'll go first this time.
Oh, reversing the script.
All right.
I like
Yes,
it. When
first.
yes, take initiative.
That's right. Well, so we're talking in this episode, we're talking a little more about my podcast, Long May You Young, new episodes every Wednesday, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all about Neil Young. And I told you, Matt, earlier, I've been pretty hard into Zuma. And so I think my song of the week right now would be Barstool Blues off of the album Zuma.
Ooh.
Great song. Great album. I don't know why it was months ago that we did this album, but I can't get away from it. And this song in particular has just been hitting me right in the feels. So Barstool Blues off of Zuma by Neil Young.
I love it.
Awesome.
All right.
I'll go. I'll go next. That's fine. So, real quick, I know actually I don't think we discussed in our last week's episode, nor this one I want up, but real quick, Luke, you're a left-handed guitar player.
Yes, I am.
One of the
Could
few.
you give us what?
One of the few.
One of the few.
Yeah.
So that's great. And the reason why I bring that up is because this song of the week is another left-handed guitar player, specifically in this band, Earth, Wind, and Fire. So yes, Caleb talked about Earth, Wind, and Fire in a previous episode. Different song though. So this left-handed guitar player is Al McKay. And he, in my song of the week, is going to be from the 1981 album, the 11th album, Ray's album from Earth, Wind, and Fire, Let's Groove. I have no facts behind it. I just really like it. Okay? It's awesome. Okay? I picked it.
It's a distorted opinion. It's just awesome.
It's just awesome. I mean, when you first listen to it, it's got like that robotic intro to it, and then it goes, let's groove tonight. It's just, I want to take my pants off and just dance in the streets or in the public.
Do it right now. No, I'm kidding. Don't do it. Don't do it.
No, I don't want to. I want to. See, I went from Matty V to Fatty V, so people don't want to see that. So, but that's the thing. But yes, 1981, Let's Groove by Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Love
it. Because I like the song.
That's cool. All right. My pick, we're talking about new metal, and Luke and I go way back, or we all go way back, really. And so my pick would be kind of in that vein, POD.
Oh, hell yeah.
Youth of the Nation, off of their Satellite album from 2001. That one obviously was quite popular in our high school days.
Yep.
And I remember listening to that album going to driver's ed specifically. So it was that particular era. But yeah, that one I figure was a good throwback for calling it back to our prior younger days.
Hell yeah.
A perfect anthem for the youth to take over the roads of Massachusetts.
That's right.
Yeah,
Nation.
exactly. Kayla, what do you have for today?
So before I get into it, just another quick reminder that, as always, if you like any of our Song of the Week picks and you want to hear them in their entirety, we do have a Song of the Week playlist on Spotify, and we link to it in the description of all of our shows, so check that out. My Song of the Week is going to tie into both the theme of this show and kind of the last show, and
Is it a town meeting song?
Well, kind of.
Oh, boy.
So I went with Down by the River off the 1969 Neil Young album Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, and Town Meeting has also covered this song, and they do an excellent cover of this song that I'm probably not going to be able to use as the clip for this because I don't know if there's actually a recording of it other than I know you guys played it a few months back. You did that live from at home, or the Stay at Home live session.
Yep.
And I know you played it there, and I was watching on my laptop because I think I was doing some work or something, and I had the speakers as loud as they would go on my little laptop speakers.
That was fun.
A great song, great cover. Definitely give it a listen. It's definitely a Neil Young song and a Town Meeting cover that stick with me. I just love that song. So
by far my favorite song to cover ever. Yeah. It's just such a great. We played a show yesterday, socially distant show. I feel like I have to keep clarifying that.
I know.
we played on a dock for boats. Like someone booked us to play a show for boats, and we did that song. And it was almost a 20-minute version of it. It's just so much fun to play. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. Very fitting considering people were out on boats, too.
Yeah.
That's social distancing.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So that is my pick of the week. And I hate to end the show here because we're having so much fun. I feel like there's so much more stuff that we could talk about.
Luke needs to come back on.
I'll be back for sure.
Yeah, we got to have Luke back. It was
fun.
great having Luke on the show. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come join us.
Hell yeah.
It's been a great time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. We'll have you back again.
I'm a solid doo-doo or whatever
whatever Matt
your fans are called. I'm a solid
opinion do.
A doer.
A doer?
A do fan.
A doer.
We'll figure out a better name.
Yeah,
we will.
Hopefully by the time you come back, we'll have something.
Ladies and gentlemen, you guys are not doo-doos. We love you guys. We will come up with the distorted opinions.
Hey, you know what, listeners? If you have an idea, you should contact us.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Ted read my mind.
What would our listenership be called? Our loyal listeners, I guess.
Yeah. And how can they get in touch with you, Matt, if they need to send you an email or something?
So they could send me an email at matt@pornhub.com. I also have an onlyfans.com email.
No, you don't.
You could you could see me in an American flag song. Or you could just you could reach us at our distorted opinions show.com.
What?
I fuck up the email. I don't get it.
So close.
Mute.
Don't get it.
Mute. Okay, so if you really want to get in touch with us, there's a few ways you can do that. You can leave us a voicemail at our Anchor page at anchor.fm/distortedopinions. You can also find all of our social media accounts as well as a list of all the platforms that we're available on in an audio-only format. You can also send us an email at distortedopinionshow@gmail.com.
That's the one.
That's the one you want to use if you want to email us. Don't use any of the ones Matt gives because you're not going to get us. I don't know who you're going to get, but it's not going to be us.
If you do get someone, let us know, though.
Yeah. Could be another
If you get a response from a Matt@pornhub.com, let us know.
Oh, dear God. And so as a reminder, if you enjoy the show, tell your friends about it. Let your friends know. We appreciate the support from everybody. We love getting comments and feedback from everybody. So, leave us a voice message, send us an email. You can reach out to us on social media as well. We're pretty responsive anywhere that we have an account. So with that, thank you everybody for tuning in and for the support. Luke, thank you so much for joining us.
Yep,
Yeah,
thank you.
thanks for having me.
I like
Hell
it.
yeah.
Yeah, anytime, man. And we'll see everybody next week with a new episode. Thanks for tuning in.
See ya.